Well, good evening, everybody. It's great to have you all on tonight. It is now 6:30, and we are going to take our deep dive into this 5-day course. I want to say thank you for taking your time out to participate in this Revenue Disruptor PM and Site Super Pro course. This is a great opportunity for you to learn everything possible when it comes to starting a project to closing a project out. So, as I go along through this entire process, if there are specific questions that you have, feel free to stop me in the middle of the presentation. I'll answer your question. This is a live recording, so I will have these recordings up in the portal for your access, so you can always go back and review anything that you missed. But I want to encourage you to take a deep dive, try to remove any distractions during this time, because this is time you're investing in yourself. I'm going to say that again. This is time that you are investing in yourself. So we're going to go right into the coursework today. This is 5 days of intensive information. And so I want to go through everything from our logistics all the way into giving you insight on what's next. Let me talk to you a little bit more about myself. Some of you may be familiar with me, some of you may not. I graduated from the University of Florida in 1997, fall specifically. I became a Florida licensed GC in 2000. I qualified 2 construction companies currently with my licenses, ACY Contractors and HT Construction in Fort Lauderdale. I've estimated projects, meaning price projects up to $200 million. I've completed nearly $100 million of projects within my own company. I've won numerous growth awards. I've literally have functioned in every position within a construction company. So when you think about estimating, project management, superintendent, in the field with tools on, I've done A to Z, human resources, accounting, marketing, business development. So I have a vision to help 3,500 contractors win $1 million contracts. I'm also a pastor, husband, father, and grandfather, and I'm honored to be accompanied in this journey with my beautiful wife and business partner, Dr. Felicia C. Young. And so today is day 1, and we're going to have a brief overview of the things we're going to cover. We have uploaded a workbook that's in the portal, so you want to access that, print it out, and we'll go into more detail about some of the exercises that are in there. I'm going to show you the portal. Also today we're going to show you the overall workflow that some of you may have already received if you have been introduced to any level of mentorship. So we have some people that are at our Elevate mentorship level, our VIP mentorship level, or our Elite mentorship level. And so we have already provided to you a branded process map for the construction process. And so we're going to take a deep dive into that, and I'm going to literally show you how to actually do it. So we're going to start with CO1, which is the nomenclature that goes with that process map. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean with the process map, the nomenclature C1. In day 1, we're starting with C01, and we're going to go as far as we can for the next 90 minutes. And then when we see where we land, and that'll end day 1, and then we'll pick up where we left off for day 2. Sounds like a plan? Sounds like a plan. Everybody good? Y'all ready to put in some work? Let's put in some work. Oh, absolutely. You will get it hanging around me, I promise you. All right, let's go. So what you'll get out of this course A complete, repeatable job site management system, real tools used by contractors on multi-million-dollar jobs, templates for RFIs, scope gap tracking, buyout, meeting agendas, a stronger understanding of how to lead, not just manage, greater confidence in your kickoff, communication, and closeout. Then at the end, we're going to provide you a certificate of completion to show that you've been trained by this system. And so what to expect: 5 sessions, about 90 minutes each. If we go over just a little bit, give me grace for that, because I want to make sure you receive the content. Downloadable slide decks, workbooks. A lot of information is uploaded already in the portal. So when we get to that section, you'll have time later on to start browsing the portal to see the documents that have been uploaded. So these are real world examples. This is not classroom theory. This is not what I learned at the University of Florida. This is stuff I actually did over the past 20 years. So it's a lot of information. So we're going to have a final recap on day 5. We're going to talk about our own personal leadership style and things we may need to adjust and address in order to be a better leader of our company. And so we want to make sure, hey, you understand you have access to these digital templates as long as the company is around and as long as somebody's paying the bills. All right. So one last thing is, I decided to go ahead and do this because I was like, man, this is a lot of information, and I never thought to deliver it this way. But this is a lot of information will really benefit a lot of companies that are either startups or really struggling. So I'm offering a referral service. It's called an affiliate program. So you can become an affiliate by simply using the sign up link in item number 1. The sign up link in item number 1. Use that link, sign up, and you automatically become an affiliate. It doesn't cost you anything at all. If you tell someone about this course, if they sign up and make the purchase, you automatically going to get that money. It's 20% across 2 of the 3 platforms. So I have an individual platform, which is currently at this date of April 2025, $997. 20% roughly of that you're going to receive. So that's $200 for corporations. So when a company brings me in to train their team, up to 10 individuals, you'll have the opportunity to still get 20% of that retainer. So that's about $1,000. So listen, if you want to earn a little extra cash while spreading the good news and helping people grow their companies, just sign up to become an affiliate partner and just use those links. Make sure that number 3, make sure your prospect purchase using the link that is in item number 3. Okay, so these slides will be uploaded within 24 hours. And so you'll have access to this again in case you didn't get this information written down. Again, make sure your prospect purchases using that link, because then I can identify that it was through an affiliate. All right. And then you will automatically, within 2 weeks, you'll automatically receive that cash however you set it up. Now, that's really important, because if someone does a refund or they protest, I need that 2 weeks in order to make sure we get that straight and I'm not in the hole. All right. It sound like a good deal? Sound like a good deal? I think it's a good deal. Okay. Yeah. All right. So also, I've uploaded a workbook that I mentioned earlier that has a few things that we're going to discuss and talk about. You want to download and print it when you can. If you didn't get a chance, because we're literally pressing time just getting this information out. So if you didn't get a chance, go ahead, download and print this information for our next session. I want you to write any questions or thoughts you have down in the workbook. So everything is in one place. And then also identify any limiting beliefs. So you'll notice there's a section where we're talking about session notes. And there may be some things you think, hey, this may be really hard to do. Michael, I hear you. It sounds good, but I'm not sure I can do it for XYZ reason. That is a limiting belief. I want you to write those things down so later when we follow up, I can help coach you through those limiting beliefs so you can overcome those barriers. And then I want you to write down any action steps, create deadlines on when you want to get those action steps completed. Now, this is very, very important. If you all do not follow my direction, it's going to be hard for you to truly benefit from what I'm giving you. I'm giving you the play. And as any coach will say, just run the play. If the play doesn't work, then it's my fault. But I promise you the play will work. So I want you to write down any limiting beliefs. I don't think I can do this. How can I do this? I don't have this. I don't have that. That's a limiting belief, and I want to address it. Write down action steps. So as I give you things that are aha moments, you have an epiphany, write it down. Write down, okay, what am I going to do next? Write down those action steps and put a deadline. When do I want to have it done by? The next thing I want to cover is the actual portal. So I provided the URL at the bottom. Again, you will have this presentation, and also via email, you'll start receiving email updates with the link at the bottom of the emails. Specifically for this course, you'll see a button where you can click to access the portal as well. It will be your username, which is normally your email address, and your password. If you are a Elevate, VIP, or Elite member, you will already have a profile. So use that same profile to log into this separate portal. And you will see that logo, this same exact logo for the portal. And then you will be able to log in. Everybody understand that? All right. Once you log in, you're going to see this. Once you log in, you're going to see this. This is what the login screen appears, how it appears. You're going to see the workbook link at the top. On the left-hand toolbar, all your forms and checklists. We're going to see on the next slide a breakdown of all the forms and checklists. And then each of these recordings will be loaded into the respective day. So day 1, which will cover what we're talking about today, will be here, and so on and so on. Okay? For those of you that are not live and you're watching this recording, make sure you go through the home screen, and there are some steps below. I have now clicked the forms and the checklist tab and opened it up. You will see there are checklists. So if you want to just print something out for a checklist, there are several checklists up there. I want you to check those out. RFI examples, submittal examples, change order examples, contract examples, daily field report examples, meeting agendas for owner and subcontractor meetings, pay application examples, release of liens, bonds and insurance examples, punch list examples, and other notices, specifically notices of delay. If you think of any other document that I possibly may have overlooked, please email me, and I'll make sure to get that uploaded. Any questions on that? Nope. All right, so if you would just grab real quick your workbook if you have it. If you don't, it's okay. If you have something to write with, I want you to write this down as we get ready to go through this real quickly. Page 10. And I want to go around the room, and I know some of you may can't talk, but hopefully you can be interactive. But I want you to answer this question because I want you to reflect on this. Where has your buyout gone wrong in the past? Buyout meaning when you have started a project, when you have started a project, what has happened? What has gone wrong in the past?
In the past, in the beginning, 2021, when we started Gun Whack clearance now, we didn't know what we didn't know. And we were just happy to get a job. And
Right.
when we realized that we didn't know what we didn't know, we were like, oh, we lost our shirt.
Okay. Okay. So
And we learned the hard way. But thank God, we had some rams in the bushes, and hey, that's it.
right. So can you identify some specific things that caused the problem?
Specific thing, I'll go ahead and start off with that. The one thing that I noticed is that we just didn't know the market.
Okay.
Because, that's just what it was. We didn't know the market. We didn't know drywall to anything, none of that. So we were like, okay, what's your number? Okay, cool, that's your number. All right. And that was it. And we just tagged on markup or add on, and that was
yes.
it.
That's good. Thank you for your transparency. Thank you. Thank you for real. I wish there would be more people to be transparent like that because that's what I find. Not everyone entered the construction industry like I did. Not everyone has a formal education. Not everyone has been doing this like literally their entire career. So when people transition into this space, they're literally learning everything like fresh, like OJT, on the job learning, right? And so you go through the school of hard knocks. and so I'm so appreciative that you all have joined and been a part of this mentorship so you can start learning, and hopefully I can show you how to avoid some of those hurdles, because unfortunately there's so many more that you will still continue to run into, right? And so the point of this class and this course is to make sure you avoid that. All right, so I want you to write that down. So I want you to start thinking about, hey, we just didn't know what to do. So how did that impact contracting subs, writing scopes? How about quality control? Right? What other things? What about schedule? So just start writing those things down, because we want to make sure we can identify which one has hurt us the most. Why? Which one has hurt us the most? Why? Because most likely it will repeat itself. I'm going to say that again, because most likely it will repeat itself. And so if you do not put place and install and implement a strategy to address that problem, it'll continue to happen over and over again, right? Because some of us, we just have a tendency or a weakness to operate a certain way. And because we never address the root cause of the root problem, that issue will continue to repeat itself. So we have to write it down. We have to come up with a written and formal approach on how we're going to address it. All right. I know it sounds elementary, but I promise you, if you do it, you will see something change, significantly change. All right. Anybody else? I'll take one more person. One more person.
Hey, Michael, if I could jump in there just to layer onto that, also, I think it's a big one as well. It's just really vetting out the subs, having the right help. Because that's a big part of your, you talk about profit, right?
Yeah.
Labor.
Yeah.
It's a big part of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And really, that's why I said I need to do a sequel to this course and do one just for pre-construction, like the A to Z for pre-con, because when we start talking about pre-construction, it starts with how we write scopes. It starts with how we write scopes. Now, listen, I can't help but to show you how the big boys do it. I can't show you how to bootleg it. I can't. I just can't show you how to bootleg it. Why? I didn't learn that way. I learned the real way, like how contractors do it, the big boys, international firms. I learned that way. So because I learned that way, I'm showing you everything I learned. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Clarence. So the next question says, what areas have you been least successful and why? And I want you to write it down. What areas have you been least successful? Is it the pre-construction and buying out subcontractors? I think you said, Clarence, maybe it's finding the right help. So is that internal help or external help? Meaning, is that my internal staff, the people that work for me, or is it my subcontractors and vendors and suppliers? And so if that is an area, well, why? What's the why? Is it lack of experience and exposure? Is it you don't know what to do? Is it you just can't determine if they're telling you the truth? It's just like hiring an employee. That's my area of weakness. I'll just tell you all the truth. So I like to lean on my wife, who has a stronger ability to identify bad bad employees or potentially bad employees. Like my wife, she can pick it up like that. For me, it takes me a minute, right? And so maybe there's some things you need to do to staff your weakness until you get stronger in that area. So you find someone else that's stronger in that area, right, to compensate for what maybe you're still working on. So you do not fall into the same situations over and over again. Make sense? Make sense? Awesome. So I really want you to write those things down because we need to discuss those things and take a deeper dive into it so we can really identify, hey, these are my problem areas. I can learn everything Michael's teaching, but if I don't address these problem areas, most likely they will repeat themselves. Okay. All right. So we talked about the reflection questions. Now let's talk about the construction process map. Okay. All of you all are part of the mentorship program. You have access to this. I think all of you, I've already branded your own process map. Okay. So this is how we're going to start. So you can see this process map has a flow, all the arrows, right? It's a flow. And we can also use this like a checklist as well. Either way works. And so what we're going to do today, we're starting at the beginning, CO1. I did not realize until I started speaking to more of my clients that they really don't even have a filing system, like a standardized filing system. So I know it sounds elementary, but I'm giving it to you. I told you all, I'm giving you everything I have. So we're going to start with that. We're going to go through this entire process map. So this is where we start a construction process all the way to the end, CO37, which you may decide at the end that you desire to incorporate what's called a quarterly warranty walkthrough. Not everyone does this. I learned this standard from my business partner, my mentor, Williams Company, because this is something they implemented on their projects in order to reduce the amount of warranty claims. Okay, so we're talking about start to finish. So we're going to go through each one of these. So this is your standardized process map. So if you ever bring in a project manager, a superintendent, you say, hey, have you gone through the process map? Have you checked off the box? Have you identified each one of these things and have done something with it? Right? This is our standardized process. We do not avoid this process. We don't go around this process. We don't short cut this process. We make sure at some point in time we check the box. Now, some of these items you will drill down a little bit deeper than others, but you have to make sure you standardize it and you indoctrinate all your staff that come on board. Hey, this is the way we do it. Yes, this is the way we do it. Now, if you want to start shortcutting and skipping steps, then you probably should go somewhere else and be great. All right. So let's talk about CO1 and just ignore that how elementary it seems. But let me just show you this so maybe you can get a filing system standardized, because most people don't have one. Now, 2025, everyone is mostly on the cloud. There's less use of physical servers to house information. Most people are on the cloud. So whether you want to use Dropbox, Google Drive, Box, BOX, or some other cloud-based services, that is fine. Whatever your preference is. I used to be a lover of Dropbox. I'm starting to not like them as much, because when I start sharing files to other people, if they don't have an account, it starts to cause them problems where they have to create an account. And sometimes that's a hang up or a delay. So there's no issues with Google Drive, or you may want to look into other cloud-based companies. But let me show you here under my company. So whatever your company name, you can create a folder, a head folder, and then have these subfolders: projects, pre-construction, marketing, accounting, human resources, safety, IT. Now, one thing I like to do is have a setup file folder. That means every time a new project starts, I'm going to use the same setup folder over and over again and just drop it into the files so it's standardized. Because what happens is, as you get new staff, right, and PTI, it's 3 of you all, so everyone probably has a different nomenclature on how you name files, how you want to save files, right? And then all of a sudden, Nehemiah, you asking Clarence, hey, where you put that file? And nobody knows where it's at. Then you have to spend time explaining where you put it. Or then you have to stop what you're doing to send it to them. Or I'll email it to you. Well, how much time did that just take away from you? If we have a standardized way, we all file and name our files, then everyone can assume, once we've been trained one time, okay, I know where to go. All right. So all your marketing stuff. So all your graphics, your logos, your photos, your headshots, all of those things should be in there. Promotional items, right? Project sheets, your resumes, all that should be under marketing. And accounting, all your vendor files, everyone you pay for overhead. Now, let me explain this. I only use this accounting folder for overhead accounting. If I have invoices or pay applications, they're going into the projects folder under that specific project. Okay, so primarily I'm using my accounting folder for any internal counting measures and overhead measures. Everybody understand that? Yes. Okay, human resources, self-explanatory. So any employee applications, W-4s, all their filing folders, drug tests, all that going in human resources. Safety, if I have any violations, if I have my manual, if I have toolbox talks, all of that's going in my safety folder, IT, self-explanatory, etc. Pre-construction, any jobs I'm bidding, all of those go in here. Now, let me kind of show you how there's a breakdown from the projects folder. I go by year. I go by year first, so all my years. So if I show you my Dropbox, it goes all the way to 2013, because prior to then I was using something called SugarSync. All right, so when I went to Dropbox 2013 all the way to 2025, and I can find every project I ever had. So then under the project a year, I put the project name, whatever the name of the project is. All right, so I'm just giving you a couple examples. Now, let's say I'm under Odyssey here. Now I have subfolders, and it's going to be identical for every project. I use these same subfolders. It's going to be part of my setup file. Same subfolders for every project. It's always going to be the same, no matter what year it is, no matter what project it is. So administrative, that could be correspondence, letters, anything that's not going to fall in another category. Prime contract, self-explanatory. So that's my contract with my client. My permit info, if I have to pull inspection, so pull a permit, it's all going in there. Bonding, self-explanatory. My insurance, my own insurance. Now, back in the day, government agencies used to have something called OSIP, which is owner control insurance programs. It's not much of that happening today, but if I had files associated with that, I would drop it in there. My contract documents, that is drawings and specifications and anything else. It could be geotech reports. It could be anything that is associated with the contract, okay? As far as a document I need to review for scope. All right. Prime RFIs. So these are the RFIs I send, prime RFIs and submittals. So if you say, well, Michael, what if a sub send your RFI? It's going in their folder. Okay. Potential COs, that's pricing. So something that has not been approved yet, I'm putting it in my potential COs folder. Prime change orders. Once I have an executed change order, it's executed by both parties, I'm putting it in here. Subcontracts, POs, anything I sub out, any purchase orders I make, they're going here. Contract schedule, transmittals. So let's say I have to drop off something, right? If I had to drop off something to an owner, I want to make sure they signed off that they received it. Because if you just drop off something, what happens? I didn't get it, and all of a sudden now you got to go buy it again and drop it off again. Well, you stop that problem when you have transmittals, okay? I put all that there. My payouts and invoices a folder. My release of liens. In the receipts, it's kind of like Home Depot and all that kind of stuff. I'm putting in my receipts folders, pictures, pre-con. So even though I have this pre-con folder, what I normally do, because sometimes my field ops, my superintendent may not have access to this pre-con folder. So what I'll do, I'll take that pre-con project. So let's say Odyssey was first in here. I would take that pre-con and drop it over here. So it has the same information. That makes sense? That way, everyone that's in the field, if let's say I estimated the job and I put everything together and I'm handing it over to my field staff, my field team. See, right now, if it's just you and you doing it all, right, it seems like it doesn't matter, but it does. I promise you, because one day you're going to hire somebody and they have to find it, right? And it's better to create this system now so you don't have to go back and try to backtrack and people still asking you, well, what is this? What is that? You don't want to go through those problems. Closeout documents. So all my warranties, my O&Ms, operation and maintenance manuals, all of that is going in closeout. And then if you have any safety stuff or daily reports, you can have that folder. All right. Any questions on that?
No question.
All right. So if I go back, I'm going to drill down on a couple more of these folders so you can see. So we're going to deal with the subcontracts folder. So under my subcontracts folder, which is here, every sub have their own folder. So this could be, KHS&S, plumber, and maybe I have, HD supply, right? They're going to have their own folder. And then under there, I'm going to have subfolders for them, their subcontract. So whatever subcontract I write them, their payout invoice, their potential changes, their actual changes I sent them, their insurance certs, release of liens, submittals, correspondence. So that's how I'm organizing everything. Under pictures, I have pre-con pictures, progress photos, final photos, aerials. I keep all of those separate. Now, under pre-con, I got a misspell right here. Under pre-con, this is the admin folder and so on. I won't go into detail, but it's self-explanatory. GMP is when I put a complete package together, and we'll talk about that in the pre-con pro course. All right, but that's pretty much how I put my filing systems together. All right, now, anyone does it like that? Anyone? Okay, was that helpful?
Yeah, we'll help. Oh, yeah, for sure, big time.
All right. So let's talk about some different documents. So now we're moving on to talk about different forms. And so you'll have a checklist, in the checklist tab in the portal. This is actually a checklist. So I'm providing the presentation to you identical to what's on the checklist. So you can just print it out, use it, give it to your team member. Hey, this is some of the stuff we need to have. Did we get a notice of award and or a contract agreement? Sometimes you may get both. Sometimes the notice of award is called an NTP, a notice to proceed. Now, large corporations, they do both. Large corporations, they do both, and you need both before you start work. They'll send you an NTP and they'll send a separate contract. You need to ask them. Now, I've worked with at least 4 different major clients that does this. So you need to ask them, hey, if you sent me an NTP, can I actually start? Or do we have to have the executed contract first? I wouldn't personally start until I have the executed contract. But you need to ask them. I ran into this with the University of Florida, Orange County Public Schools, and a few more. Okay. So normally you want to have what they call a project charter or a kickoff memo. This is just basically, hey, we're getting ready to get started. This is the information you need to get started. Sometimes this is not required. So if you don't check this off the list, it's okay, because it doesn't come up all the time. We talked about the owner GC agreement already in the contract agreement. Sometimes there is an AIA document that's used, especially with private clients. But other times, most major corporations, they may have their own agreement. If you run into a situation where you have a smaller client, like I did when I was doing a job for the church for the credit union, I had to provide them an AIA doc, and we used that. So want to make sure you have that form available. So sometimes with these AIA docs, you have to go online and actually purchase the doc, because some of them, they say it's actually illegal to reuse it. So anyway, all right, subcontractor pre-qualification forms. Now, I think you all were talking about this. Hey, how do I know I have the right sub? Sometimes a pre-qual form will help you identify if this person is strong enough. It's like getting a resume, or it's just like getting an employee application. You're able to take a deeper dive to see, hey, are they really qualified to do this work? All right, so here's some other docs: permits, permit log, insurance certs, if there's a bond requirement, license verification. So that means before I sign up anybody, I got to verify their license is active, right? Just because they say their license don't mean the license is active. All right. I want to double check soils report. And some private clients, they won't have a geotech report done. That's the next thing, geotech survey. They won't actually even spend the money to get this done, and all of a sudden you give them a price based on the soils being okay, and then oops, it's contaminated. All that soil has to come out and be remediated. Now the job just doubled, and they're looking at you. All right, so this is a good checklist. Okay, utility coordination. So if you're doing new construction, this usually happens in new construction or upgrades, like major upgrades. You may have to contact the power company, or if you're doing a water tap, you got to contact and coordinate. So you may need that as a list. So all of that you want to do before you start work. All right. So there's also some internal, I don't know what that is. There are also some internal setup that you want to do. So decide, hey, what project management software you want to use, how to set that up. So we have a checklist for that. I'm gonna show you in a second. An actual project kickoff checklist. So when you get ready to start the job, we call it like a pre-con meeting. And so we'll talk about that as well. You want to make sure we covered the filing index already. You want to have a job cost set up. So, and this is how you're going to internally set your project up on the accounting side. Okay. Now, we're going to spend time talking about job cost accounting, but let me just see for those of you on the call, how many of you are familiar with job cost accounting already? Anybody? No. Okay. So I have a separate training I did on job cost accounting that's in the portal, and it's going to be under the payout tab. So when you go to your checklist, and not checklist, when you go to your forms, and yeah, it's on the forms and checklists. When you go on the forms and checklists under payout examples, under that there's going to be a video talking about job costs, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time teaching that in these 5 days because I don't have time. But it's important for you to understand what it is. So I have an example of a job that's cost coded, right? Because that's how we track where money goes. Okay. So you're going to need cost codes and all that. So you probably don't have all of that. I know I have one client currently that's in this course that right now they're working on setting up these cost codes so they can put it into QuickBooks. Okay. So we're working on that. All right. So also schedule of values. You need a draft in an approval form. So what's your process for your schedule of values? That's how you do your payout. So I'm going to show you more about that. How you going to track buyout. You need a vendor contact sheet, procurement log, subcontractor scope gap log. It's a lot of stuff in it. I told y'all I want to know the big boy way. All right. A letter of intent. I give you an example of that in the course. Of course, your subcontract agreements, you all have that. You want to make sure they're giving you W-9s, and you got a lien release form. So most of these documents, I've already uploaded an example of it. Okay. Safety orientation acknowledgement. So on and so on. Anyway, here's some more logs. Once your job gets started, you're going to have to create these things, and you need to make sure you already have it. Again, I've uploaded most of this. At least 80% of these forms and templates are uploaded already. So RFI form, RFI log, submittal log, drawing log, shop drawing transmittal form. We don't run into that too much anymore. Now we use just a normal submittal process. Meeting agendas and minute templates. So we do that for what's called OAC, owner architect contractor meeting. Owner architect contract meeting. That's the nomenclature that's used. OAC meeting, subcontractor weekly coordination, and then your internal notes that you may have. You may need, a separate agenda for that, and then a template for your daily reports, inspection logs, etc. Okay, let's talk about it. Any questions? Did that just blow your mind? Just a little bit.
So a lot of good information. Definitely.
Okay, anybody overwhelmed yet?
And then, Michael, we did start actually tapping into some of the cost coding with Red Team.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
We start tapping into it.
Okay, did you all already purchase that software or no? Y'all did?
Got it.
Okay, y'all did? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what I would like to do, because I realize as I start putting all this together, I'm not gonna have time to teach all this information and teach software. So let's schedule during your session. Right now, y'all on the monthly coaching or whatever. Let's take our deep dive in that software training. We'll do it then. Would that work? Would that work for y'all?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. So we'll just take a deep dive then. All right. So let's talk about software. So there are 3 project management softwares that I recommend that's out there, and they all are different, very different, and it's reflective in the price. So you have Contractor Foreman with one of my clients that's on the call, uses that. Red Team Flex, which is the one I've used the most, and then also Procore, which I've used and other companies I've worked with have used. Now that's the most expensive one, but I think it depends on where you are with the company and the projects that you're working on. Okay, but if you are doing GC work, literally working every trade or nearly every trade, if you are growing and you need to house everything in one spot, uh, I would say it depends. But if you want to tie in your pre-construction systems into Red Team and your hard bidding and all that, I would say use Red Team. If you're not really that sophisticated and you just need kind of like a high level view of what's happening, I would say go to Contractors Foreman. Now, I think once you get over probably about 15-20 million, you probably gonna need to go to Procore. Okay, so that's just kind of just my overview. So the first thing you want to do as you're starting the job, you got to make sure your software is set up right. So you got to invite users specifically on Red Team, right? So you can have 20 people in the company, but not all 20 gonna automatically have access to that project. So you got to invite those users, confirm their permissions. What do they have access to? Upload your project documents. That's almost always the first thing. Load your schedule of values. Okay, your schedule of values is each line item, and I will always recommend it corresponds to the contracts that you're writing. I'm gonna say that again. This is the teaching moment. You'll thank me later. I promise you, you will thank me later. Do not manipulate your schedule of values to be numbers you want them to be. Use your actual subcontract amounts. Use your actual subcontract amounts. This will help you not become overbilled or underbilled. If you don't know what that means, we'll talk about it another day, another time. But make sure you're trying to actually follow the paper trail. So if you write a contract to the concrete company for 30,000, the mason for 45,550, make sure your schedule of values have the same number. Don't start moving numbers around. It will only be a headache, I promise you. So just trust me on that one, okay? You want to set up your daily reports and then all of these different logs. All of these different logs. These logs you would need to really start tracking jobs and tracking everything that's happening. Logs are also the way you report information to your client. So submittals, RFIs, payments, any potential pricing for change orders, that actual executed change orders, any owner direct purchase, subcontractor compliance. We will talk about this as well a little later to make sure you have all your documents from your subs. Meaning, I think somebody mentioned this in the class yesterday. Do you know, are you sure you have your W-9 from the sub you just hired? Are they out there working without insurance? Right? Do you do you have an executed agreement? So you want to make sure you actually track this moving forward. So that'll stop I forgot, I got busy, right? And so during our growth spurt, I had to have one individual to focus on this because we had literally at our peak, we had 20 some jobs going on at the same time, all throughout the state of Florida and outside of Florida, actually. And so we had so much stuff happening, I couldn't keep up. My PMs couldn't keep up with who, turned in their paperwork because we would actually hold their pay application and wouldn't pay them if we didn't have it, right? So that will also give us leverage to get that information in so they can, expedite it. So it's really important to start looking at those laws. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. So here's another checklist. And this is just a checklist. So all you're going to do is print it out and identify, hey, is this something that we have or don't have? And once you go through it, put it in the job file. Okay? Real self-explanatory. It's just a checklist. Do we have it? Don't have it. All right? Towards the bottom, there's a few things that may not always come up. The actual environmental reports, unless it's site-related project, utility coordination, unless it's site-related, conditional use, you usually don't run into that, but every now and then. SWIP, NOIs and NPDES, that's all site-related. Okay, so you won't run into that unless you have site work on the project. All right. So also you want to make sure you start developing a contact list, because nothing's worse than everybody's calling you, hey, you got the phone number for such and such, you had this person's email address. Now I like Red Team, I'll talk about it because I know it the most. You can actually set up the project with this information, so it'll keep it in there. So anytime you do a meeting minute or meeting agenda, you can select these people to participate, and it's automatically going to pull that information over. So I really like this feature. And also you can print it out. The subs can have access to it in case they need to get a hold of somebody. It's really important that you have all your subs information. Who's the contact person? Now, this wasn't something I was planning on talking about, but legally, whoever is identified in the contract is your legal person for any legal documents. So you need to identify who that person is. But sometimes they may have a project manager or project, what they call a project engineer, or somebody else that's your on-site contact person. Guess what? In Red Team, I'm putting both of them in there. Okay? Because you never know which one you may need to contact, depending on if it's a legal document or if it's a legal issue or if it's just a specific field related issue. Why is this important? Let's say you get into a dispute and now all of a sudden you want to send a delay notice to that subcontractor. Who are you going to send it to? I'm going to send it to the person on the contract and the field person. Sending it to both of them. All right. Make sense? All right, let's talk. I hate to just lecture, but unfortunately I got to give you this information. Let's talk. Any takeaways so far? All right. Anybody else?
I think the biggest takeaway right now from what we have covered is the importance of being organized.
Yeah.
And having the systems, right?
Yeah.
That's the main important thing. You have to be organized. This is a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff thrown at you. And if you're not organized, you're gonna be lost.
Well, not only lost, but waste a lot of time. Yep. And we know time is money, right? So you're gonna waste a lot of time. So that's good. Anybody else? Thank you for that. All right.
Another thing specifically for me was the not manipulating the SOV.
Oh yes.
The actual numbers. I was looking at you working with that the other day or maybe it was a trading. And
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, how is he going ahead and adjusting that and then paying it out, and we're going ahead and marking up the numbers when we initially get it from the subs.
Mm-hmm.
So I was already seeing how that would be an issue. So it makes sense when you're saying not to manipulate it, but to use the actual numbers, so like that it's easier to track everything.
Always. Thank you, Rodney. Praise the Lord. Always. I'm sorry. That preacher come out of me every now and then. Always. It's a paper trail. Remember, again, you will grow your business and someone else has to come behind you. And when you set the job up and you've changed all the numbers and your internal bookkeeper comes in now and they're having to help you, they can't help you because you've already manipulated numbers and most likely you didn't keep track of how you changed it. So now all of a sudden it's a mess and they're pulling their hair out trying to figure out, well, what's what? Always use the exact numbers, right? Always, I promise you, just lock in doing it that way and you will save yourself a lot of headache. Just trust me on that one, okay? All right. Thank you for that, you guys. Let's talk about next thing you want to start thinking about is scheduling your coordination meetings. Scheduling your coordination meetings. So we have an OAC meeting, which I explained, owner, architect, contractor meeting. You want to actually lock in that date. Normally you want to get the owner, say, hey, when do you want to meet to have our meetings? Normally it's an hour long. Now you want to think about your subs. It should be all of your subs. You actually determine when this meeting is going to be. Your sub meeting should be determined by you. That's the prime. Then you will have a pre-start install meeting. So a pre-start install meeting is, for an example, before the roofer gets started, let's sit down and talk about everything, every step, your process, your methodology. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to look at the submittals. We're going to look at your timeline. We're going to make sure everything is in order before you get started. So major trades, you want to always do this with them. So site work, concrete, roofing, MEP, you always want to do a pre-start install meeting. And that's separate than a pre-construction meeting, okay? So you will have a pre-construction meeting where everyone comes to the table and you go through this agenda. But these are specific field-related meetings, okay? So you have OAC, subcontractor, pre-start, safety orientations. Now, for those, you can do videos where you can purchase a video that you can use, or you can find other solutions. I'll try to look up some other solutions to provide for you all later in these next 5 days. So you can just say, hey, we'll just grab this video, play it for the individuals. Maybe they have to take a short quiz or whatever, and then we know they've been oriented. All right, third-party stakeholders if necessary, meaning you may have to have a coordination meeting. Let's say if you're working at a school, well, the principal needs to be there. Whoever's that occupant, maybe you're at, a health facility and there's a specific occupant in that space. You in the utilities, municipality, etc. Now, you want to make sure that you email calendar invites to them. Don't just send them a regular email with this information. Why? They're going to forget it. Send the actual email calendar invite to all of those that are invited. Offer hybrid. That means in person and virtual. So some of them can attend in person on site. Some may not. So always try to offer hybrid if possible. Send the agenda at least 24 hours prior. Send meeting minutes at least 24 hours after. No more than that. Why? Because people forget. And you want them to respond to your meeting minutes in case something is wrong. Why? Why? Anybody know why? Why is sending meeting minutes vital? Anybody want to guess?
Well, so you'll be clear on the scope of work or whatever, issues you may have or the possibility of whatever came out
Okay.
What a type of
You-
clarification is.
Okay. Correct. But let me add to that. In case there's ever a dispute on what was said, in case there was ever a dispute on what was decided upon, you actually have meeting minutes that say, hey, this is what we talked about a year ago, right? You got to remember, every project is not going to last just a month or two. Some projects may last 6 months, 8 months. And when you get into those situations and there is a dispute, you want to have written documentation that proves this is what we said. Okay. So if you ever have to go to court, God forbid, if you ever have to go through mediation, God forbid. Now, I've been in mediation before. It's no fun. But the better you have documentation, the better position you'll be in. Okay. And then you want to create an action log, meaning an action log is what's the things that we need to do, act on once we leave this meeting. Okay. So let's talk about the RFI checklist. So this checklist is also in the portal. So these are things you want to make sure you check off as you're doing these RFIs. Now, let me explain this. I'm not just saying this is an RFI as you're doing things in the field, as you're building. This is before you even get on site. You want to do another thorough scrub of the drawings to see how do we build this. Somebody who, whether it's a project manager, superintendent, or both, need to sit down and say, hey, let's go through the drawings and the specifications and find problems. Are y'all with me? So before you even step foot on the job site, you're already looking, what's not answered? We're getting ready to install this. Do we have all the answers we need to do our job? Are there any conflicts? Okay, so before drafting an RFI, you want to confirm whether the issue meets one of the more of the conditions below. Is information missing? Is there a potential scope gap that could lead to extra costs or delays? Does the design raise constructability concern? Are details or dimensions unclear or conflicting? Is clarification needed to confirm the materials, means, or methods? Are any deliverables or submittals unclear or undefined in the contract? Okay, so some best practices. There's another step as well. I don't think I put it on the slide, but in the actual checklist, you can see some more items. Some best practices: keep the RFI focused on one clear issue. Avoid bundling multiple problems. I had to learn this the hard way over time. You know, sometimes we want to just say, I don't want to create a whole nother document. So let me just keep asking, 3 or 4 questions and place it under one RFI. That's a no-no. Recreate a new RFI for each issue. Now, if it's related, like directly related to the initial RFI, yes, you can have like part 2, an indentation A, B, C, or whatever. You can do sub paragraphs to a question. If you have a secondary question, that's fine. But if they're not related, keep the RFI separate. Be professional. Really, really important. Again, I said this yesterday. When I write, it's not like how I speak. Be professional and in a respectful tone. Okay? Why? Reread what you wrote, because you all know how many of you have read a text or read an email and wondered if they was coming at you the wrong way. Right? So it could be the same way in this instance. So I will reread and say, hey, could they have taken what I said, derogatory way, or thinking I'm, being nasty or nice nasty. Okay. You're asking for clarification, not placing blame. Well, if you all would have done this, well, we wouldn't run into this. No, don't do that. Just be specific to your question. Follow up if no response is received within the required time frame. Now, normally on professional jobs, the specification, the architect will list how long they have to respond. That would normally be in the submittal section, and it will tell you how long they have. Sometimes this is missed when we're scheduling projects. We'll miss the time frame they have to answer RFI, okay? But keep that in mind. And then you want to track your RFIs in your RFI log, okay? All right, so now we're going to do something that's in the workbook, and we're just going to do a little exercise, and we have two different problems here. So if you want to pull that workbook out, we're going to talk about that for a second. I'm going to pull it up. So we have RFI example number 1. Okay, so this is the workbook handout. We're going to identify what if information is missing or unclear, then write it for clarity. Okay, so we're going to do that. Then we're going to note any action items. All right, so problem number 1 says no details are shown for how the concrete tilt panels are to be connected. Okay, so how would you write that RFI? How would you write that RFI? Anybody?
And Michael, would you have the sub send you the RFI so that at that point you could forward it over to the architect, or?
You could. Is it necessary though? Let me ask you that question. Is that necessary? Maybe. Let's talk about it. That's a great question. Let's talk about it.
Because I think some of the questions that will get thrown your way will come from those specific subs that are dissecting the plans. Sometimes, more better than you at that point that they're asking.
Yep.
And then you're trying to get them an answer. So at that point, you're having them go ahead and submit, the RFI so that you can go ahead and forward that over.
Absolutely. So this is what my rule of thumb and best practice is. At the beginning of a job, before we start in construction, if I send out a letter of intent or if I send notification for them to start, I ask them to start reviewing the drawings and issue me RFIs. But also our team is going through the drawings and we're looking for those things we talked about: conflicts, missing information, constructability. We're looking for that as well. Here's the thing, and I understand when you're first getting into the industry, there's some things that you are not aware of. And so what happens is you have a reliance on the sub to find the problem. As you get more experience, you probably will find the problem before your sub. Okay? And that's just really based on experience. So unless it's highly specialized, most times now I can find the issue before my sub can. Okay? So some of that comes with experience as you start learning how constructability works, but it's really, really important that you stay in front of it. I'm going to tell you why. It's no different than with submittals, and we'll talk about that probably tomorrow, but it's no different than with submittals. Some RFIs, if you just assume what they're asking is legitimate and you don't test it, now how does that look when you send the RFI to the owner, to the client, or to the architect, and they have to now correct you and say, why did you send that to us? The answer is here. Because either you didn't understand or either you didn't look. So this is something, another best practice of mine. Don't just pass paper. All right, I'm about to get on my preaching horse. Don't just pass paper, right? if you ever work for any of the clients that I've worked for, they will always tell you, we don't pay you to pass paper. We pay you to do a job. And if you are our contract manager, our general contractor, you are responsible for making sure this is right. So if you're just passing paper and you're not reviewing to ensure that it's accurate and correct, guess what? You just wasted the owner's time. You just wasted the architect's time because you didn't do due diligence to make sure that the questions was legitimate. All right, this good stuff. I promise you this good stuff. So you want to make sure. So to your point, Rodney, I really love the point you made. To your point, that's where I take the time to actually sit with that subcontractor and say, hey, explain this to me. I'm telling you, this is how I learned everything I learned. Because when I didn't understand, I would ask the sub. I said, hey, I'm green. I'm green as this leaf behind me. So explain to me what you're talking about, because I really don't know. And they will tell you. And they're obligated to tell you, and that's how you'll learn. And so it won't happen again. So make sure you do that. If there's a question, always vet the RFI yourself. Vet it, meaning let me see if this RFI I received from my sub is actually even legitimate question. Because I'm telling you, half the time the answer's already there, but they didn't either see it, they overlooked it, or didn't realize it was on another sheet. Because they're accustomed to looking at certain sheets, especially my MEP trades. They'll say, oh, well, it wasn't on the mechanical drawings, but it's in the architectural. You didn't look at all the complete set. It's in the documents. You signed an agreement for the documents, not just your sheets. All right. Did that help? Did that help somebody?
Yeah, oh yeah. And like you said earlier today, at the beginning of the call, he said, how many of y'all like to read?
Right. That part.
And none of us do.
Right.
Be all honest.
Well, you know, we're in the industry. You're going to have to if you want to protect yourself. All right. So we have problem number 1. No details are shown for how the concrete tilt panels are to be connected. What are you going to ask? Anybody thought about how you're going to ask? Anybody? Somebody take a stab at it.
Can you put that back on the screen, Michael? I'm sorry.
Problem number 1.
I guess you would just ask for just more information on the tilt panels for the concrete. You would just generally just ask that right on the RFI. No?
Would you need to include any additional information?
Would that be a request for anything structural, like from an engineer, or you know?
I mean, that could be part of the question. What else? How about a reference from what you're looking at? How about a reference of what you're looking at? So on sheet S301, the tilt panel elevations, it does not indicate how the panel to panel connections are to be made. Please provide detailed information on what's required. If something structural is required, please advise if you're providing this engineering or we're responsible. That could be a question, right? But you want to be as specific as possible. Why? Because architects are going to get this question. They're going to say, what are they talking about? I'm telling you, as a green project engineer, I ran into this all the time. Like, Michael, what are you talking about? And then they'll respond, if you just go ahead and turn to sheet 302, you'll see I had an enlarged section with this detail that maybe you overlooked. So it's important for you to specify where are you looking, refer back to exactly how you came up with that question. Okay. All right. And then what will be your action steps? So you would definitely need to follow up with them. You also need to identify who you're supposed to send it to. Now, that should be identified in your contract. If it's not identified in your contract, I would send it to the owner and the architect, and I will copy one or the other with any correspondence. Or you can talk about that in your pre-construction meeting. Who should we send all RFIs to directly? Okay, so that's something that needs to be discussed. If it's anything in the specification, so let's say, you know, the specific mix design for the concrete in the tilt panels. Well, you need to specify the exact spec, the spec subpart included, exactly what you're reading, so they know exactly where to go to address your question. Okay. All right, so let's look at problem number 2. The life safety plan indicates a corridor wall is 2R rated. So the life safety plan is often a separate plan for the fire marshal. It shows a wall that's 2R rated, and the enlarged floor plan show the same wall to be a wall framed up to the underside of the ceiling. You all understand that? How would you ask that question?
You reference both sheets and then just state that there's a conflict, and then just ask for the clarification on
Okay.
the correct directive is.
Okay. Anything else? I like it. Anything else?
You also asked to see what the county or township or specific requirements are in reference to the inspector of what they're requesting to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm fine with that. Here's one more, and I agree with both of those, Rodney. Here's one more. How about, because I know the code requires this specific space that the corridor walls are rated, right? And because maybe the assembly is a code issue, so based on code, I recognize that this wall has to be 2R rated. So now I'm not only going to confirm or ask them to confirm or clarify, I'm going to provide a suggestion. I'm going to say, based on this specific code, please confirm that this corridor wall is required to be 2R rated, though it conflicts with, like you said, sheet 201 or something like that, right? So now I want you to start thinking about where there's opportunity for you to use your expertise. Now you're asking them to confirm your solution. Now, this is really important with RFIs, because sometimes RFIs can be based on interpretation of documents. Sometimes it could be what's the best practice. Sometimes architects will say, well, whatever's means and methods, whatever's the best way to do this, is not necessarily a code issue. It could just be means and methods, how you want to do it. And maybe the way the architect has it drawn is going to cost more money. So you can actually say, hey, we recommend, or I recommend, that this application occurs in order to provide, or meet the requirements in the drawings. Like, you can actually suggest things at times that they may consider. And if they don't want to consider it, they'll just respond that way. So again, we don't just pass paper, right? We actually have to start thinking, okay? And you trust me, if you haven't run into this situation yet, you will, and you'll realize, hey, we don't have to do it like this. Why they're asking for this? Well, send a suggestion in the RFI. Don't just ask them to confirm what they've drawn. Are y'all with me? Sometimes you have to actually ask them, hey, confirm that my idea is legitimate, okay? And let them shoot that down.
Like working in other states, how do you prepare yourself to know the codes of other states that you're working on? Would you just how do you do that? What's the most efficient way to do that?
Man, when you start talking about code issues, it's not as easy because a lot of it is learned over time. I would say this. I would focus on like the major items, like the little stuff is almost most of it's similar from state to state. But when you start getting into wind loads, like here in Florida, right? When you go to South Florida, you got hurricane rated, certain mile an hour on the coastline and things like that. So I would kind of focus on the things that really brings the distinctions between each state. And sometimes you can actually just Google a quick list for that information. When it comes to like wall framing and spacing and all that, I'm not really gonna get into all of that. Some of it you're gonna learn just like you learn in the Florida code, because none of us sat down and memorized it, right? And I've been doing this over 20 years, and I haven't memorized it yet. So you just learn kind of as you go through the process. And again, talk to your subcontractors, to make sure you understand how things have to be done, because a lot of times they'll be the ones that's teaching you a lot of the code items that come up. So I would say first, focus on the major differences between the state of Florida, primarily ADA, uh, uh, wind zoning are the major big ones here in the state. And then after that, I would just kind of like follow up with my subs and just double check certain things that I may, be suspicious of. And you can always use Chat GPT nowadays. Like, Chat is a beast, so you can shoot Chat a quick message. Hey, is this specific issue a code violation, or is it legal per the state of Georgia code, building code or whatever? So that's how I would address it, honestly. All right. So we've talked about RFIs and kind of getting started ahead of the project by reviewing drawings, looking for conflicts, looking for scope gaps, raising any issues with constructabilities, unclear dimensions, conflicts. And so the next thing is to also look at identifying quality control measures. So we need to assign roles and responsibilities. Who's going to handle checking behind the sub? Who's going to make sure it's done right? Is that your project manager, your super? Who's doing it? So we need to assign roles on the job. Schedule pre-install meetings is really important. I mentioned that. What are the non-conformance possibilities? So let me just say this. If it doesn't look right, it's probably not right. Anybody just walked on the job, be like, I don't know, that don't look right. And you ask somebody about it, oh, I've done this 20 years. And I'm like, it don't look right. Most likely it's not right. Okay. So think about trying to identify what can help me identify this non-conforming. That means it's not per the drawings, it's not per the spec, it's maybe not per the ASTM standard. Okay, so that's another quote unquote code that we hardly ever read, ASTMs. None of us read ASTMs, but it will come up on an inspection. Right? The inspector say, hey, Michael, your lath has to be screwed off every 9 inches in the field, and it has to have either a washer on it or cover 3 strands of wire lath. But that is not in the code, but it's in the ASTM for lath. So think about when you start going through your submittals, let me try to identify what's going to make this non-conforming. Also, what could void a warranty? Discuss maintenance. How are we going to maintain it? And then how are we going to protect it? Anybody ever been on a job and a new floor was installed and people come and walked and just track mud all through it? So how are you going to protect your work? Or you just put in new doors and all of a sudden the furniture movers come in and they just bang your doors up? Or better yet, you just finished painting, the movers come in, and now all you have scar marks all over fresh newly paint. Right? So how do you protect it? How do you avoid that? So start thinking about those quality control measures. What are you going to put in place to prevent those things? Okay, I won't go into more detail on that. Let's talk about safety. So you want to start thinking about when you're setting up a job. Let's start talking about safety during our pre-construction meeting. But most importantly, let's talk about setting up a site-specific safety plan. And what does that mean? That means what things can we run into this job that we may not run into on another job, right? So if we are a heavy use of ladders, maybe we try to find a way to avoid ladder use, and we're using lifts or scissor lifts. Or if somebody's welding, well, let's talk about, people not being in the area. Maybe we got to safe off the area. Maybe we have to put signs up. So this job is specific. So though I have a safety manual, right, and all of you that are my clients that we've done safety manuals for you, how do you have a job specific plan? So it could be a one pager. Hey, what are we going to do on this job to make sure everything goes well? Maybe there's a flooring installer that has a certain material, certain type of grout, and maybe it's going to, evaporate a vapor that's real strong. Or maybe it's a paint that has epoxy in it and it's going to be real strong. Well, what are our safety measures for, keeping everybody safe, not breathing in those fumes? Like, start thinking about, hey, what are we going to do for a site-specific safety plan? So you want to work on developing that. And it doesn't have to be long, but you want to write out something. So you want to implement that for orientation. What about an evac, emergency plan? What happens, God forbid, if a car run into the building or somebody pass out because of the heat? What if there's a robbery, right? What if somebody get jumped? Like, what are we going to do? It makes sense? Y'all still with me?
Somebody get jumped, we play it back, Wrinkle.
Right? You want to say call 911. Now, if you all going to jump them and fight them back, just don't put that in your document. Why? Because it will be used in a court of law that you already had intent to fight them back. So now your motive has changed. So anyway. All right. Obtain toolbox talks for your weekly field meetings. Now, sometimes you can do that. So lazy contractors will always just place this on their subs to do. But you can also have your own toolbox talks, especially if it's, not a large job. But even if it is, if you have 50 people out there, it doesn't matter, 100 people, you can still do your own safety meetings or toolbox talks. And what that is, hey guys, we noticed that, we have a very tight area over here where everyone's working, have different trades in one space. We need to be careful with our tools. God forbid there's someone that's working overhead. Maybe we have to stop working that area because somebody's working overhead. We don't want them to drop a hammer on somebody or whatever. Or if you are working overhead, you have to have all your tools tethered. So we need to start thinking about what that's going to be. All right. Obtain all your data sheets so you can have that on file. I recommend putting it in the binder where it's near the job. So in case, something combusts or something catches on fire, you know how to address it, right? And whoever's on that site should be aware, okay, they're using a chemical that can spread very fast if it catches on fire. Well, will a fire extinguisher put it out? Or do we need some other type of chemical? Okay, you want to think about how you're going to schedule your daily safety walks and also any job site postings. So if you need signage, right, especially if you do a job, let's just say in an area that has a lot of transients and you don't have any, this is a hard hat area, or PPE is required when entering this site. If you don't have fencing up or no warning signs, that's a problem. It's called lawsuit. They calling Dan Newland and Morgan and Morgan. Okay, we don't want those kind of problems. So you need to start thinking about what job postings you have. So here's some examples, and this is another checklist that's in the portal. So you have to have this posted on your job. It's required by OSHA. The job safety and health is the law poster. I meant to put a link where you can buy these, but you probably can Google it. Y'all smart. But you could buy these. We used to get these every year. They're not that expensive, but you can buy them. And I think there's even a site where you can actually print them for free. The EEO poster, Fair Labor Act, Family and Medical Leave Act, you have to have all that stuff posted. So normally, if we have a job site, we'll just post it in one area and actually put our permit box near that area to protect everything. Okay. So in our permit box, of course, we have our permit inspection cards for my subs, notice of commencements in there. I have my information in there as the contractor and also the owner information. And then you don't really have to put a schedule in the box, but it's good to have emergency contact. Like if something happens, let's just say overnight, the fire department has to come out there and they need to call somebody, or anything could happen. First responder, well, they need to know who to contact. So you should always have whoever's responsible for the project, their information available. Here's some other ones. I won't go through all of those for the sake of our time, but I won't go through all of these. But you want to make sure that, hey, if you need signs up for first aid and those things, that you have those up. You want to make sure you post them in a visible area, normally near the site entrance, job trailer, or break area, and that they're weather protected. Because if you don't weather protect it, after about a month, you won't be able to read it. All right. So all of you all are on here. You all have your branded safety manual. But in case you're watching this and you need done for you documents, I put a link here for you so you can get that done. And so we can put some of these documents for you and your own safety manual. All right, let's talk about this. And we'll wrap up in like 15 minutes. Y'all can hang on 15 more minutes.
Oh yeah, we good.
All right. So you want to also prep for lien or NTOs, notice to owner. And so here in the state of Florida, of course, with lien law, you want to protect yourself. Now I can tell you how many times something's gone wrong with this in my experience. Either a sub didn't file correctly or we didn't file correctly, and sometimes it can bite everyone in the butt. So we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence by tracking it. Okay. So the timeline says from the start of work or your first delivery to the job, within 45 days, you have to send a notice to owner. You have to send a notice to owner. And the notice to owner is just a document saying, hey, owner, I'm the contractor that's working on your job for whoever you're working for. Just want to give you notice that we're there. If you receive a notice to owner, most likely a copy of the notice to owner, most likely your subcontractor or your supplier sent the notice to the actual property owner, and they copied you because they're working for you. Now, that's not a lien. That's not a problem. It's just a notice to let them know that they're working. Okay. Now, within 90 days of the last period of work, we're not talking about punch lists. We're talking about actual work. Within the 90 days, in order to file a legitimate claim of lien, that has to be done. If it's not, it can be refuted. Now, I'm going to tell you, people will still file claims after 90 days. But if you don't respond to it, they will still be granted the lien by the judge. So that's why it's important. If it was filed after 90 days, you have to actually dispute it. Okay? And then after it's recorded, then the next 15 days, it has to be served to the property owner. Okay? And then you have up to a year after that lien is filed to actually file a lawsuit. So let's say you don't hear anything, they never respond. You have up to a year to file the actual lawsuit. Now, just because you filed a lien doesn't mean anything. You have to file a lawsuit too. Okay? And I promise you, you're probably going to lose money. But most people only do this when it's a lot of money involved. Now, a company I've used in the past to file my NTOs, there are several of them out there, but I've used ntoflorida.com. So if you want to look into them, their website look old school, but trust me, they know what they're doing. They've been doing this before I got in the industry. All right, but that's who I use. All right, any questions? Any questions?
Nope, good.
All right, we're going to do 2 more sections and then we'll wrap up for the night. So now we're going to work on our site logistics. Now, I recommend doing this during the pre-construction phase. And then if we need to tweak something once we start construction, we tweak it. But I recommend doing this during the pre-construction phase. So when we start talking about site logistics, that's how we're going to construct the job. If we're going to have a trailer, not have a trailer, where else our office is going to be. If we're going to have portalets, where they're going to be located. For all the workers when they come, where they're going to park. Where's the dumpster going to be located? If I have multiple dumpsters, if I have storage trailers, where are they going to be located, right? If I have to coordinate a crane coming in, do I have enough room? Have I verified it has enough room to get into the property? You know, maybe it's a tight turn. Have I verified those things? And so I'm going to actually do a plan, and I'm going to take an aerial. Okay, I'm going to take a picture of an aerial, and I'm going to do a PDF diagram of where everything is located. Okay, anybody familiar with doing the site logistics plan? Anybody? Nope. All right, so I'm going to give you just a checklist. So you want to think about the general site layouts. You got the property boundaries. You normally would try to have a north arrow just so people can make sure they're looking the right direction. Any streets associated. If you just put the property without the streets, it's pointless. because no one can really recognize where the property is. So you want to put any streets or local site access points, make sure it's clearly identified. Any fencing, gates, how people going to enter and exit the site, really important. Delivery routes, right? Where you, if you have a specific drop off for deliveries, right? Lay down areas for materials, parking. We talked about all that. Emergency vehicle access. Now, normally you have to have like 12-foot for any emergency vehicle to come in. That's like required by law. Um, Again, I mentioned the crane or hoist, where your dumpster's going to be. If you're going to have hazardous materials, where you're storing that. Okay, where your job site trailer is going to be, portalets. If you need a break area, where is that going to be? So we're going to actually take a layout and show all of these different things. Okay, so this is called a site logistics plan. Here's an example. So you can use Google Earth, you can use MapQuest, you can use anything that can give you an aerial of the actual site. So this was a job, we was partnered with CPPI up in Gainesville. And so this was the innovation hub. So this was phase 1, and they were going to build phase 2 in this area. So you can see basically that this was going to be the building pad area, and then they had a material lay down here. Then they had a crane path that was shown here. So you can do all of this in Adobe Acrobat. All of this, you just drawing rectangles and selecting the properties to actually give it a different color. Adobe Acrobat. So you can see the red line is the fence, continuous fence. And then on this side, they had some different type of panels, right? So they showed the fence, they showed the gate, they're showing site traffic to come in and come out. So they showing how they want people to enter the site here. Everybody see this? Okay. And they're showing how they're going to keep the construction site separate from everything else. Then they show subcontractor employee parking and a gate here. So the only other thing I said they could have added is just, hey, what's the access from employee parking all the way over here? What's the desired access? Are they coming across through this walkway over here? Because otherwise they'll be jaywalking across the street. Make sense? Any other questions on that? Site logistics plan. All right, so this is the last thing we'll talk about. Schedule checklist. That's also uploaded in the portal. So you want to work on the schedule. Again, no different than the site logistics plan. You should have a schedule started in pre-construction when you're doing your estimating for the job. To me, in my opinion, how can you put an estimate together if you don't have a schedule? I'm going to say that again. How can you do an estimate without a schedule? You can't. Well, you can. It just won't be right. Or what we're saying, you throwing it up in the air and see if it's going to, come back down or not. So you don't want to do that. You want to have some type of logical thought behind the numbers you put together. So for instance, your durations directly impact your overhead. It directly impact how long your supervision is on the job, how long you're going to have a portalet on the job, how long you're going to have temporary utilities on the job, right? How long you're going to have cell phone use on the job. So all of those are costs. And if you don't accurately figure the schedule, then your costs are going to be incorrect. So I recommend what's the word I want to use? I hate to say detailed, but maybe a preliminary conceptual schedule. So maybe you don't drill down too heavy on the task that has to be completed. Like, let's say, for instance, let's say I have a CMU wall that's 20 foot tall. Can I build all 20 foot of that CMU wall, the height, at one time? Anybody know the answer to that?
No.
No. That's the answer. No, you can't. You have to build it in lifts, right? Because it's too heavy, it's gonna cave in, it's gonna fall over. So you have to let the grout set. So then we want to make sure, hey, just something quick. Maybe I figure, hey, it's going to take 20 days to do all of the walls instead of just breaking down the detail and saying by lifts. Now, the right way would do it by lifts. Then if I go a little bit longer, I have the actual time. But if I'm just trying to do something quick, at least I say, hey, I'm itemizing that one line item and I have all the walls included. And I just need to make sure I think about if I lose time because we're doing it in lifts. But I don't necessarily have to break it out that way to do a quick schedule. That makes sense? Okay. Y'all looking at me funny now.
Okay. When you complete your schedule, you start awarding bids. And the schedule is sent out to the subs because you're having them agree to either be there on set date or anything like that. I'm assuming that's just what's done, right? Like you're sending that out during the awarding process to make sure that to let them know that it's awarded, and then at that point you're either sending them a contract for them to go ahead and sign off on what they just received, and that's their agreement, regardless of what's on the date for them to be there. That's weekends, evenings, whatever it is, if it's on the schedule for them to agree, correct?
It depends on how your contract's written. So you can't assume that if your contract doesn't say they have to make up with overtime for any cause, that occurs, right? And who's going to sign a contract that says any cause that occurs? Nobody. Now they may agree to, if I cause the delay, I would agree to work overtime to make up my delay. So again, it depends on how the contract is written. Now, the contract you all have with me basically says that. So you have to recover the time that you caused a delay. Now, that's only if I give you proper notice. So again, there's some steps that has to happen to enforce it. So just because you send them a schedule, but you never send a delay notice, now all of a sudden you want to try to hold their money or kick them off the job or get somebody else. Well, you didn't follow the steps that's in your contract. So it's a complicated answer. So, but in general, I know what you're trying to say, but I don't want to just answer it that way, because there's too many other things that impact you being able to do it quite the way you described. So the right way, especially when you have time, you want to develop the schedule based on what you think is going to be. Send it out to your subs for input, right? And that's before they're awarded the job. You place their input, you go back and forth, do some push and pull. You place their input into the schedule, then you kind of finalize something to present to the client. Once you have that, you've been awarded the job. Let's just say the start date slid, then you have to update it, right? But that update will be reflected in the contract that goes out. Once they sign your contract, right? To your point, yes, they have now agreed, but you have to make sure that schedule is an exhibit in your subcontract. If you just email it to them, it's not part of the contract. You have to make sure it's included as an exhibit in the subcontract. Once you do that, now, yes, you're tied to it. Okay? Based on the contract you all have with me, if they do cause delays, right, we send them 48-hour notices. We let them know, hey, you all are causing a delay. We write a letter. Now, I have example delay letters in the portal, so you can check those out as well. All right? So hopefully I answered your question. Awesome. So let's make sure we start with the estimate. So here's your checklist. Review your detailed estimate line by line. Now, most people avoid this step, right? I want to train you to do it the right way, because some of us, we don't take the time. So we'll just go, hey, I need to get all these bids from my subs, but we don't actually take the time to do an estimate on our own. So let me ensure that I identify any scope gaps by doing my own estimate. Matter of fact, I said this in the class I taught on scope gaps. If you missed that, go watch it. It's on YouTube. It's in the portal as well. Make sure you do a detailed estimate so you can identify any potential gaps. Use that detailed estimate line by line to create your task. Now, use it to outline major tasks, cost-driven tasks, and deliverables. Then you want to create a preliminary task list and organize it by work category. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. And then you want to flag any long lead items. Let's say you got a mechanical unit and it's going to take 12 weeks to get. You have doors, it's going to take 16 weeks to get. You want to always identify those long lead items because they will become part of what we call the critical path. Meaning if you don't get it in time, it may delay the schedule. So you want to identify those things first and put those procurement times in your schedule. Okay. And then you want to try to align your schedule with any owner milestones or contractual dates. So let's say, for instance, you have to be done by July the 1st. Well, maybe you put in all your tasks and all your durations, and now it's pushing your schedule to August. Now, at least now, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. So now we got to figure out, do we have to work overtime? Are we going to have to resequence the way we organize our tasks? Okay, so that helps you with that. You want to build your baseline schedule draft. I like Microsoft Project, okay, but you can use Project, Excel, Red Team. Also, if you want to go with the big boys, you can get Oracle Primavera P6. I think it's overrated, in my opinion. But that's what the big boys use when you have projects with like 1,000 tasks. All right. Assign initial durations on your based on your production rates. I'm not talking about that in this class, but if you need more on that, I can show you another video I recorded. Sequence activities in logical order. So how are you going to build the job? So you need to start thinking in your head, what comes first, what comes next. Start building that job and then tying those tasks together with predecessors and successors, okay? Again, collaborate with your subs. Present your preliminary schedule to the trade during negotiation, just like you were saying, Rodney. Ask them to review the duration, give you feedback, confirm the crew size. That's also important. So I'm talking about all of this in post bids before I hire them officially. We're talking about, well, how many people you're gonna have on site, right? What's your peak size of your crew? What's the minimum size of your crew, right? So I have an understanding from the beginning. Okay, I'm not going to read all of that, but you all get it. And then once we have those conversations, then we're finalizing the durations. And watch this, your task logic is really, really important. So you have to review your logic for errors. What is logic? That means if I say, hey, I'm going to, paint this room, I'm going to paint this room with all 2 primer and 2 coats, but I got to come back in and maybe still put up the ceiling, or I have to come back in and put another product in, let's say tile, and the tile person is going to come in and splatter mud all on it if it's not protected. That didn't make sense. So sometimes you want to go back and just make sure your logic, we call it your task logic, actually makes sense for how the job should be built.
And Michael, on that note, we had a project recently where in the IT room we had to go ahead and put up fire-rated plywood on the walls, and we couldn't paint it until the building inspector came and saw it. But the building inspector was just at that point coming for the final, So that's at that point to go ahead and start painting around all the IT equipment. That would obviously be a logic error. How do you navigate that? Would you do a partial
Yep.
building inspection? Okay.
Well, I'm gonna make sure. I think I cut you off. You said, would I do a partial building inspection? I would.
Final, yeah.
No, I would have that plywood put up sooner.
Right, and then have them come out and just inspect the plywood before the final, because that was part of the final. It was all the outline inspections.
Yeah, I mean, normally it just depends. Normally, you can get that included in another inspection. It just depends. I've run into that before. It depends. Sometimes you can tie it in with another like fire inspection, but I've done partial finals before, plenty times actually. So, like depending on the AHJ, the authority having jurisdiction, some of them, like at Disney, we had to do, the only way to call the fire inspector out was for a fire final. There's no other way, right? So there's not like a partial fire, the code ever. I never seen one in 20 some years of doing this, right? You only have whatever the code, I don't forgot what it is, 2070 or 2075 or not 20, but 270 or whatever the code is, right? You can only call that one fire final code, and you just have to let them know what they're coming to see. So if it's a partial, they gotta still come out there. Like that's the only way to get it approved. So your best bet is to have them come early just for that one thing, so you can get it out the way, so you can go ahead and paint everything. That makes sense?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we want to finalize the baseline schedule. And we're going to lock in those dates, review logic, identify the critical path so we know, hey, we can't slip here. So if there's a long lead item that's causing the critical path or in the middle of the critical path, we're flagging those things and say, hey, we can't miss these dates. Because we know if we miss the date on the critical path, it's going to push the schedule, right? You can also do what we call a 2-week look ahead. Most people do 2-week look ahead, so sometimes a week look ahead, where you can actually export your chart into a shorter time frame, and you can do that and just use that for your weekly meetings, your coordination meetings, okay? Again, we talked about the software already. Okay. I think we'll stop there. All right, any questions? We'll stop there. We're at 2 hours now. Yeah, we definitely will stop there. Oh man, that time went by quick for me. No questions. Everybody ready to go? Okay, so make sure if you have any issues with navigating the portal, just send me an email. Let me know if you have any challenges there, and we'll take care of that and get you hooked up. But all of you will have that. So you'll see tomorrow that this recording will be uploaded under day 1, and the slides for today will be uploaded under day 1. Okay, so as we're going through this, Nehemiah, just start thinking about writing down any specific questions that you have for a red team. So if we're addressing, I didn't use red team a lot for the scheduling side. I said barely ever. I think maybe once. So I prefer, I just could navigate project a lot easier and faster. So for red team, I usually focus, like my pre-con, all our pre-con was done in red team. Well, not all, but as far as soliciting quotes from subs, we did all of that in red team. It's so easy once you get going. Now I still built my estimates outside of red team. Okay, but you can do it inside. But again, to me, there's some things in the system that just kind of slow you down a little bit. So I'm always was about speed. So, you know, if it was gonna slow me down, but as far as like getting the solicitations out is excellent.
Okay. Well, I got a question for you. Could you elaborate on that? Like, kind of open it up a little bit as far as like what slowed you down about building estimates?
So, like for instance, if I had to say, hey, I have 4,000 square feet of tile. Well, for me to put that in Excel, I can do in probably like 15 seconds. For me to put that in red team, it's probably gonna take 2 minutes. You know what I'm saying? So now, when it came time to actually start the job, and we're gonna talk about this tomorrow, when I was gonna set up my budget, then I'm just manually putting those numbers in based on the trade, right? So you can manually put in numbers too, or you can do bid tabulations in there as well, where you can compare subs. We use that sometimes, but not a lot, because the Excel spreadsheet that I showed you all yesterday, that's what I've used probably 90% of the time. So really for me, when it comes to software, I always use what's easiest and what's fastest. I didn't get caught up, well, it all gotta be in red team. Well, yeah. I made sure everyone had access to the information and they could follow the paper trail. So once you have a system in place, it's not as critical if it's not all in red team. Now, if you want to start that way, go ahead. That's no issue. But for us, after a while, it was about speed. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on it. I love the bid solicitation side. When I had an estimating coordinator, she loved it because, like, let's say you go to trade fairs and you start meeting different people, boom, get someone, load their information, send them a pre-qualification form, that same form you already have. You can put it in your system and send it out to them. Say, hey, you want to be on our bid list? Fill this out, blah, blah, blah. It can track, you know, who has all that compliance stuff, you know, insurances and all that. So that's always good. So you can actually use that to run reports, you know, just for the compliance side. So, and then when you are looking for certain bids, you just going in and clicking, you know, that trade. So you're looking for a drywall person, boom, 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 send it out. Like once your documents are uploaded.
Correct.
So it, you know, for solicitations and bids, all day, hands down, I would use it all the time. So, and then once you get the job, you can just transfer that information over once it's an active project. You know, I hated where you had to approve every step. I hated that, but whatever. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, guys. We're going to let you all go. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to see again how far we can go. We're going to be talking about setting up your project budgets, sending out letters of intent when to do that. We're going to talk about setting up your submittal registers, that submittal process. That's a long process. And I want to show you how to do it the right way, how to get ready for inspections, sending out subcontracts, how to negotiate those contracts. We're going to talk about that as well. And we'll do all of that tomorrow. Okay. So from that point, we'll probably be at least a third of the way through this flow chart.